Welcome to the Cave of Perception,
where two monks swing both ways.
All right, we're going to start off with some questions because who we are seems to be important to you, but
The
really
audience.
who you are is important to us. So we'll start, you play along at home. Arthur.
Yes, Lyle.
Origin story. Tell me, how the heck did you come to this place in time?
Well, let me tell you, I started out in the most normal way possible. I was born in Ukraine. My parents brought me here when I was 9 years old, and they taught me this mantra that all immigrants teach their children: make money and you will be happy. That is the mantra I grew up with. In fact, there were bells all the time. Money, 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 money. There were the prayers. You would pray to the altar. You would pass a bang and go, there's our church. Anyways, so I did that at 19. I started my first business because that's what you're supposed to do. And by 21, I was fairly successful. I had made the money. I bought a condo. I had cars, went out with lots of girls. And I was sitting there one day staring at my brand new, and at that time, 40-inch TV was big. It was also as deep as it was wide. So that's how long ago this was. And I had this epiphany that I still remember to this day. I still remember the color of the furniture and everything else, that my life is over. That's it. I've reached a dead end, and it would make no difference if I put a bullet in my head right now, or if I lived another day. It would be the same shit from here on. Make more money, buy a bigger TV, make more money, buy a bigger condo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Put me in a miserable place of depression. And I said to myself, there's got to be something else. Now, I grew up not knowing anything about Eastern thought or Eastern spirituality at all. It was the farthest thing. And especially I grew up in at least the first 9 years, in a communist regime, which basically made me an atheist. So there was no God, no spirituality, and money was king. Mm. Right? So not really a surprise that I got to that point. Anyways, and I said to myself, I should think of doing something Eastern. And I walked into the office the next day without having any plan whatsoever, without having any idea to go to the library or to look up some books or anything like that. And a man came in for an interview for a part-time job. And he was interviewing with somebody else, and I was in the other room, and I walked by and he said, and I don't know why I said, what else do you do? He goes, well, I actually teach Buddhism and martial arts. I'm like, no, you don't. He's like, yes, I do. I'm like, all right, where do you teach it? He's like, well, in Newton. I'm like, all right, are you taking new students? He's like, I am. The next day, I was his student. I stayed there for 7 years. I went a little overboard. I came to practice at 6 in the morning and again at 7 at night. Twice a day, every day for 7 years. And as a good Buddhist, he thought that being inside was contrary to the way of the Buddha. So he thought that no matter what the weather, we have to be outside. So for 7 years, I was in minus 15 degrees or whatever it was, in ice storms, in rainstorms. And in the summer, I had the pleasure of being visited by thousands of mosquitoes. So I did that. And after 7 years, I realized he still hasn't answered the fundamental questions I started with. For me, that wasn't enough. For me, there was no real answers. For me, I felt like after 7 years, even after studying the philosophy and meditating and fasting, I fasted for 5 years in a row, nothing. For me, I was back to the same place where I was when I started. It doesn't mean that he didn't know how to teach. He was a good teacher. It just meant that for me, this didn't answer the fundamental question. What am I supposed to do here? What is this kind of life about, and why? Okay, now it worked for some people, and I saw that it worked because I saw some people get significantly better. But for me, I realized it didn't work. So we parted ways. And that was an interesting junction in my life where, because of my dedication to my practice, I stopped paying attention to my business. It failed. I had no relationship because my relationship was only with the Buddha. I basically was by myself, same thing, back in that place. And I thought to myself, all right, well, I got no teacher. I got no relationships. I got nothing except for a little bit of money. What the hell am I supposed to do now in my life? So I thought there was only one tool I had that could potentially make a difference in my situation, and that was fasting. So I went on a long fast, and I was going to do 30 days, but my mother kept calling, so I did 22 days. Although I got to be honest with you, after you've done 4 days, after that, everything is easy. So at 22 days, I stopped. And that was the inflection point of my life. That was when everything changed, because literally the next day I got a call from a man that I think I've met, but I don't remember. He said, listen, Arthur, I have a house. I'm trying to find a buyer to flip. Are you interested? I said, where is it? And he told me a city, and I had no clue where that was. I was never there, in the Massachusetts. And I said, yeah, sure. Why not? And I'll be honest with you, I've never, ever done them before in my life, but I consider myself a slutty girl at heart. So I say yes to everything. So I just said yes. And he said, all right. So I signed the papers to get the process going. And in a week, a woman entered my life who, within a couple of months, it was obvious she was going to be my wife. And a lot happened between then, but I won't get into it. So I said to her, I said, listen, I'm going to be flipping this house, but maybe we should take a look. Maybe we should live there together. And she said, all right, where is it? And I told her, and she goes, all right. So we went there, and the house was but the land was incredible. And it was surrounded by lilac bushes that were in full bloom. And if you've ever smelled lilac bushes, it's the most intoxicating smell ever. So we decided to keep it instead of selling it. And at closing of the house, the man who was selling me the house, the owner now, said, I heard from your broker that you do martial arts. I said, I don't even know my broker. How could you have possibly had any conversation with him? And he said, well, do you? And I said, well, yeah, I did. I haven't done it in a half a year or so. He's like, all right, well, there's a school across the street. I said, no, there isn't. There are hedges across the street. He goes, no, there's a school across the street. I went, whatever. So anyways, 3 months go by. We moved in. I have no job. Finally, I have a steady female, though, which was fantastic. But I found myself playing Xbox every day while she went to work. And sooner or later, that started getting to me, because I was her chauffeur, driving her to work, playing Xbox in between and everything. And I got good at Xbox. That was a bonus. One day I said, all right, enough's enough. I got to do something with my life. And I walked across the street. And a big man, bald, answered the door. And his first words to me was, who the fuck are you? And I said in a very squeaky tone, I went, I am your new neighbor from across the street. He goes, yeah, what do you want? I'm like, and I didn't know this, but because of his background, he was holding a weapon in the back. One of his hands was in the back holding a weapon. And now he only told me that later. I didn't realize that at the time, because people he crossed in his life had a tendency of being vengeful. So he said, well, this is a Taoist temple. And I went, Taoist? And I've only seen that word once on some book somewhere, when I thought it was a really big book. I'm like, that looks like a lot of reading. I don't know if I want to do that. So he said, you know what? I don't have time for you now. Come back on Sunday and we'll talk. I went, fine, whatever. Now, Sunday was still my day when I was fasting, and I was a vegetarian, and I didn't drink. And this is my mindset as I'm walking across. I'm walking across to the temple now. He's sitting there with a cigar this long, with a beard this big, dark beer. And besides him was sitting a gorgeous, gorgeous woman who was his wife, also sipping some sort of wine. And both of them are scanning me worse than any MRI could ever scan you. I mean, I felt so horribly naked. It was the first time that I really felt what it was like to be exposed. And I'm like, all right, well, this is going to be interesting. And I forced myself to take a few more steps, and he came in, he goes, all right, let me show you. And he brought me to what was a Taoist temple. And there were statues, and they were all holding weapons, and they all had this horrible grin on their face. And it was 2 full floors of that. And I'm looking at it, and somebody who grew up the way I did, I had absolutely no context as to what I was looking at and why. Anyways, so he gave me the tour, then he sat down. And this is what he's used that actually I remember. He said, imagine that you're driving a fast sports car, and that as you drive, dirt gathers in the windshield to a point where you can no longer see out. He goes, how long before you crash? How long before you kill yourself?
He froze.
Did. Let me just.
Sorry, folks, we had a technical difficulty here. We had a little glitch, so let's try again. Take 2. Anyway, so this man told me that Tao basically, as you're driving a sports car down the road and your windshield gets dirty, how long before you crash, how long before you die, and at the very least, how long before you miss the very important turn in your life. And he said, what Tao does is clear the windshield so you can see the road ahead. I went, that's pretty cool. So he said to me, I need a minimum of 3-year commitment because I haven't taken a new student in 5 years. And I went, yeah, no. Yeah, I said, I can't do that. I can't, I'm probably going to get married right now. Yeah, no, I can't do that. He goes, I respect that. He goes, you're actually the first one to actually tell me the truth. He goes, most people lie to me just to get into the temple and the program. I said, all right, well, sorry. He goes, here's the manuscript of the book I'm writing. You go read it. And when you read it, come back to me and we'll talk about it. I went, all right. It took me 3 months to get through 300 pathetic pages, okay? Because I could not understand what this man was talking about. It was as foreign to me as aliens coming down and telling me, you know, how to travel through interstellar space. It was just, I had no clue. So I went back to him and I said, well, it seems interesting. But by this time, the 3 months went by and I realized my life was still going nowhere. So I went back to him and I said, I'll give you the 3 years. And that's where my life started. That was the biggest turning point in my life, where this man was a Taoist grandmaster. But more importantly than that, which I didn't realize at the time, his wife was a Siberian shaman. So they taught me from both the male and the female point of view of the same thing. He taught me martial arts and Tao. She taught me meditation and Qigong. And they kept going at me for many years because they had a little side bet, which I didn't realize until years later. They bet who was going to make me something interesting, who was basically going to mold me into a human being. So they both poured a lot of energy into me. The turning point in our relationship was when they finally walked across the street and came over for dinner. And before they stepped over the threshold, they gave me a bottle of wine and they said, we're only here for 10 minutes. We have to go. So let's get us over with. I'm like, all right, sure. So anyways, they walked in, my wife served dinner. 5 hours later, they left. And this started a process where every night for 4 years, they would come over to my house for dinner for steaks and vodka. We went through a lot of cows. and we went through a lot of bottles of vodka. But the most interesting thing about that is when you get your Taoist teachers drunk is when they actually start telling you the real things. So I was privy to be sitting at the table. Let's just be honest here. All I was able to do was survive them both. I can't say that I did great or phenomenal. I just survived them. Okay. The amount of information they were pouring into me and the practices were insane. I just simply survived them. Now, I'm not going to get further into this, but the one cool thing that happened from it is as I gained clarity, my body actually readjusted and became stronger. I happened to have lost 50 pounds in the process of doing Qigong and studying with them. And I went back to my natural weight. I actually started a company. And what happened is because I was always in this really, really difficult startup, I would come back every night. I would sit down with my master and I would ask him, here's what I'm dealing with at work. How would Tao look at it? He would tell me, not from a business point of view, but from the Tao point of view. And I would go back and I would make decisions based on what he said. And they always freaking worked out. And we grew to 500 employees and $100 million. And I was able to survive each and every day simply because of Tao. Even when bad crisis hit, the only reason I survived and came out on top was because of Tao. Let's just be clear here. It was only because of the teachings of Tao and the practices that I was able to survive and thrive. And I found that after that experience in particular, I started my own school, and that was always with me, that how to help people get through crisis. Not necessarily just teach them Tao, but how to help them use the tools to be able to get through really difficult times in their life and to be able to survive the really good times. People don't understand that, but it's much harder to survive the good times than it is to deal with the bad times, because you're not paying attention in the good times and you think it will last forever. Anyways, fast forward, China, blah, 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 got ordained, blah, blah, blah. Here now, met you. So cool. Let's do this.
Yeah, the seeds of our downfall is usually when the sun is shining brightest, is what I've been told. And it's true, right? Familiarity breeds contempt. You think, I'm young, I'm gonna have all these wonderful things all my life. I don't have to plan for tomorrow. And then when the Tao knocks at your door and goes, I'd like to talk about my plan for your life.
But also, we also treat the closest ones to us, right?
Yes.
With contempt. We figure, they're going to be there forever, whatever. Yeah. They'll deal with our shit.
Yeah.
Up to a point.
Up to a point. That's why we should deal with our own shit before we ask someone else to, hey?
Absolutely. Amen.
Thank you, Arthur.
Tell me your origin story.
Oh, we're going to stop right here, and we're going to take a little break, and then we'll come back and you can interview Arthur.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
How long's the break?
For as long as we want. 3 days.